Presidents, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, having only fairly recently been afforded the privilege of addressing this Parliament, I was somewhat astonished, indeed touched, to be invited back again to discuss the crucial subject of how we can shift our economies onto a lower carbon trajectory. Now, I realize only too well that you are engaged ceaselessly with momentous issues, not least how to navigate the turbulent currents of this difficult and serious economic climate. But it is certainly heartening that here in Brussels, so much thought is being given to the profound changes we need if Europe is to cope with the long-term economic consequences of climate change and the depletion of the world's natural capital. Now, if I may, and since you have been rash enough to ask me in the first place, I would like to take this opportunity to consider why there is no more pressing problem, and also how, perhaps, it might be addressed. First and foremost, I believe we need to deepen our understanding of the relationships between food, energy, water, and economic security, and the policies which are put in place in those areas. This is increasingly important given the rising demand and competition for land and other resources, which is already having an impact on prices and is exacerbated, as you will no doubt have noticed, by rapidly changing weather patterns. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am a historian, not an economist, but it is plain to me that responding to these problems with a business-as-usual approach towards our pursuit of GDP growth offers only short-term relief and not a long-term cure. Why? Because I cannot see how we can possibly maintain the growth of GDP in the long term if we continue to consume our planet as voraciously as we are doing. We have to see that there is a direct relationship between the resilience of nature's ecosystems and the resilience of our national economies. And let us not forget, it is on that resilience that our future prosperity actually depends. Now, I know there is a great deal of debate about the meaning of resilience. I cannot help but think it means an ability to absorb, repel, and adapt to external shocks. And without it, we have very little, if any, capacity for mitigation and adaptation. If the fabric of the Earth's life support system fragments, as it appears it may be starting to do, if those systems become weak or even collapse, essentially, if nature's capital loses its innate resilience, then how long does it take for our economic capital and economic systems to lose their resilience too? A graphic example of this, ladies and gentlemen, is found in the fate of the world's rainforests. Having already felled or burned a third of the world's tropical rainforests in the last 50 years, 6 million hectares of rainforest continue to disappear every year. That, of course, is the equivalent area of nearly 24,000 football pitches every day. And with them go tens of thousands of species of plant and animal, gone forever into extinction. Together, of course, with who knows how many vital potential cures and medicines and innovative biomimetic solutions to the problems we are facing. And because the trees are not there to transfer billions of tons of water to the atmosphere, so the world's weather patterns are disrupted which in turn seriously undermines the stability of food production. So you see, burning a hectare of rainforest has a direct impact upon the livelihoods of many communities, and thus a direct impact on economic growth and prosperity at a local level. This has been underlined in recent days by the discovery that the once-in-a-100-year drought, that by the way has now occurred twice in 5 years, has killed so many trees in the Amazon that the depleted forest may be becoming a source of greenhouse gas rather than a store. Stopping deforestation is not a lifestyle choice. It is an absolutely critical part of any low-carbon growth plan. If we fail to address this problem, despite everything else we might do, there is no answer to climate change. Neither is there, surely, any way round the fact that we have to move away from our conventional economic model of growth, based as it is on the production and consumption of high carbon intensity goods. We need to meet the challenge of decoupling economic growth from increased consumption in such a way that both the well-being of nature's ecology and our own economic needs do not suffer. It seems to me that we need a framework focused on resilience that enables us to recalibrate and balance our approach. If we do not think about creating such a framework and resolve that central dilemma soon, then I fear we are in for a very rough ride indeed. The trouble is that we do not have the luxury of failure, and success will be in building low-carbon industries that provide not only substantial economic opportunity, but also a means to ensure Europe's competitiveness. Now, there are happily some encouraging signs of progress. I've followed closely and have been very encouraged by the Strategic Energy Technology Plan, which aims to transform the entire European energy system, how we source it, produce it, transport and trade it. I mean, this is a big step towards making low-carbon technologies affordable and competitive, and therefore a market choice. In fact, if I may say so, with this particular initiative, you have offered a very encouraging example to the rest of the world. I know only too well the difficulties you must have encountered in mustering support for the EU target of reducing greenhouse gases by 20% by 2020. But climate scientists, by the hundreds, are warning that if we are to avert the worst consequences of climate change, we have to reduce CO2 emissions by at least 50% by 2050. That could only mean your 2020 target has to be a minimum ambition. I know that many in the EU aspire to agree a target of reducing greenhouse gases by 30%, and I can only applaud their efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, let us not forget that the oil-dependent, high-input, industrialized form of agriculture, which now dominates food production around the world, ties food prices firmly to the price of oil. One study estimates that a person on a typical Western diet is in effect consuming 4.4 litres of diesel per day. And this factor helped push the FAO's food price index up last December to its highest level since it was created in 1999. We should also bear in mind that we live in a world where 1 billion people go hungry and another billion are nutritionally deficient, while yet another billion suffer from the health impacts of overeating and obesity, mostly in richer countries, where billions of dollars worth of food are also wasted and thrown away every year. At the same time, in the developing world, around 40% of agricultural produce is wasted before it even gets to market. Poor land management means that yields are frequently at only 40% of capacity. This is surely an insane situation. And sadly, our highly intensive form of agriculture also affects our marine environment, as nutrient enrichment caused by agricultural runoff is becoming a major issue for marine health. As you will know better than I, nutrient enrichment leads to algal blooms which cause significant depletion of dissolved oxygen levels in the water and so create dead zones that are uninhabitable to fish. The UNEP's Global Environment Outlook report in 2004 cited over 140 dead zones worldwide, among the largest and most famous being the one that occurs annually in the Gulf of Mexico due to runoff from the US Corn Belt. In 2002, this particular dead zone was estimated to be the size of Massachusetts. Furthermore, and I have to say not very encouragingly, a recent report from Denmark suggested a possible scenario where a combination of higher temperatures and increased levels of carbon dioxide leads to a rise in these persistent dead zones from just under 2% of oceans today to in excess of 20% by 2100. Now, it is perhaps worth noting that 25% of the carbon dioxide we emit is absorbed by the oceans. But it appears that the capacity of the oceans to continue this function is decreasing due to the loss of coastal habitat. For example, 13.5 gigatons of carbon dioxide will be released within the next 50 years as a result of mangrove clearance that occurred between 1980 and 2005, much of this due to shrimp farming for the European market. This is equivalent, ladies and gentlemen, to all transport-related emissions in 27 EU countries over a 15-year period from 1997 to 2005. In addition to these problems, the health and productivity of our oceans is also a threat from overfishing, climate change, toxic pollution, invasive species, and habitat degradation. These multiple threats make it imperative that a holistic and precautionary approach is adopted in order to manage marine ecosystems so as to ensure maximum food security benefit from fisheries, while understanding the carbon-related consequences of assuming that aquaculture will be able to fill the protein gap from the precipitous decline of wild fisheries. Now, I suspect I may not be alone in thinking it's strange, to say the least, that globally, despite subsidies in the region of $16 billion of public money every year, we appear to be close to bringing the fishing industry to its knees. It is worth recognizing that the fishing industry contributes over $200 billion a year to global GDP, but may not be able to do so for much longer. But here, in the midst of such a big problem, lies a potential solution which could be of use to the other sectoral challenges we face.